Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the webinar series, Voice for the Unborns, organized by the Earthmates Foundation, Sri Lanka. It's an absolute pleasure to see all of you here today. And before we move into the proceedings of the day, let me briefly tell you about our organization. Basically, Earthmates are a group of young people who are disturbed by the damage that keeps happening to the environment and want to protect it for the future generations. In this process, we envision a nation that is empowered to protect our natural resources and foster sustainability. So we understand that in order to achieve this objective, creating awareness at community level is an extremely important requirement. And this to the first session of the webinar series, Voice for the Unborns. And today we will be talking about green activism for environmental conservation, a legal analysis. I'm Lahiruni Ekanayaka, an attorney at law and a member of the Earthmates Foundation, and I will be moderating the session. Also, joining with our discussion today is Dr. Kokila Konasinghe. She's a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Law, University of Colombo, teaching environmental law at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. She's also an advisory board member of the Earthmates Foundation and also the founding directress of the Center for Environmental Law and Policy of the University of Colombo. Doctor, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today. So now, before we move into the very first question of the day, I would like to inform all of you that there will be a Q&A session afterwards. And if you have any questions, you can either type them in the chat box or you can directly contact us by unmuting your microphones. And with that, we'll be moving to the very first question of the day. In terms of laying the foundation for the topic at hand, Dr. Konasinghe, would you be able to provide a general overview on the subject of environmental law, like how it's recognized as part of the legal system at local and international levels?
Thank you very much, Lahiruni. It's a pleasure to have you moderated my session. So, as a student, I can remember that you contributed a lot for Logos Green project at the faculty, and I really appreciate. I think many of the Logos Green alumni as well as present students are here today. And it's an absolutely pleasure that to join with you. And when this proposal came, I didn't think twice. I usually think many times before I take a decision. But when Earthmates invited me, I didn't even think twice. I said, yes, I will. So it is my privilege to be here, and I'm honored to be invited for this session as the first speaker. And I have my heartiest blessings and wishes for many more successful series of events, as well as discussions, panels like this for the future. And yes, so good evening, everyone, and I go on. So I would like to speak about what Lahiruni asked me, how environmental law was introduced as a subject to national and international level. Now, before we move on to that in detail, I would like to very simply and very briefly give you an overview of environmental legal approach to environmental protection. Because now in the ancient times, when we look at the evolution of environmental law, from where it came and how it was originated and how it has become up to the level now we know, and all of that, we see that there is a very interesting pattern that you can see. And I always share this with my students at the very beginning of our courses. That is that this whole idea and the concept of environmental protection is no alien concept to human beings. Because if you look at Adam and Eve, where some people believe the origin of the man began and the whole story has something to do with environment and going against the conservation, or if you do not take care of the environment, or if you do not live in harmony with environment, that's the end of the human survival. So Adam and Eve's story, if you look at that from that point of view, you will see that it teaches us the lesson of environmental protection. And also, if we go back to the ancient time, because when we talk about environmental protection, I think there are non-law students as well. So if I elaborate on how we should look at the evolution of environmental law, I would say that we should take this as two stages. First stage is that the ancient approach to environmental protection. And then we have modern approach to environmental protection. So if I may go back to the ancient environmental policies and how we did it in the ancient time, as Sri Lankans, we have a very proud and something that we can boast about, and how we protect the nature and how we conserve the nature is something that is very green and very bright story that we have to share with the rest of the world. Especially as South Asians, we have very rich culture and history of environmental protection. So there we find that many traditional and ancient historical evidence of environmental conservation. So if I talk about what happened when Arahat Mahinda met King Devanapiyatissa, we all know that there was this IQ test, right? So it's all about the nature and the environment. So the knowledge of the Arahat Mahinda tested whether this king has the intellectual capacity to understand such a high intellectual debates and philosophies on Buddhism. So he tested the king, putting a lot of questions on environment, nature, and also the concept like public trust doctrine. The king, you cannot kill the animals as you wish, because you are just the king, you are just the ruler, you are not the owner. So even the animals, even an innocent deer has the equal right to live just like you. So it's your duty to protect the land. So that message was communicated to the king by Arahat Mahinda. And if you look at all the ancient ruins in Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa, Sigiriya, Jaffna, we see a lot of traces of rich environmental conservation history. So in Jaffna, in Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, all of these areas, ancient kings lived very closely in harmony with nature. So all the reservoirs they built, they took the environmental conservation concepts into consideration. That is exactly what we talk about sustainable development, integrating environmental protection policies into major development projects. So if you can imagine that ancient kings built fort, something like Port City, they would never neglect the environmental protection conservation policies that should be included in the project plan. So does any other environment development project they did during the ancient time. They very carefully analyze the environmental impact. And that is why in every reservoir, ancient reservoir, they have some forest cover in the nearby to protect the groundwater system. And also in the traditional chain cultivation, you must know the farmers traditionally, what they do is, before they burn out the forest to cultivate Chena, what they did was they made loud noises to chase away the biodiversity. It is all about biodiversity conservation. And another example is, in every paddy field, there is a particular area that is reserved for birds. The farmer, the traditional farmer, did not cultivate that area because it was left for the birds and other biodiversity. So that's the way that you have to think of the nature. Nature is not just something that we can make use of, but it is another, let's say, a living thing, just like us. So that kind of respect and dignity for nature, we can see that in the ancient time. Now, let's move on to the, and this whole idea, if any one of you, I think most of the participants are from different universities, and if you think that if you plan to do your higher studies, I would really like someone to do this kind of research, going back to the history and investigate what kind of environmental policies that we have. I think that will be an excellent contribution for the environmental law and policy and environmental science or political science, sociology, postgraduate degree. That will be an excellent contribution. And also I should mention that something like that would absolutely be recognized by the international global literature, because that is something that we are lacking, except for the Hungarian Slovakia case where Judge Veeramantri referred to our Mahavansha and Thupavansha. We do not have much rich literature that analyze the historical perspective of sustainable development or environmental conservation, especially in the South Asian region. India, Sri Lanka, and all the other countries have a lot of things to contribute from the historical perspective. So I would like to invite one of your students, one of the participants who are here, think about that. There are so many information out there that you can contribute a magnificent piece of literature to the legal and other literature. Okay, now then I am moving on to the modern approach to environmental law. Now, during the 17th, 18th century, and even before that, we know colonization. And if you look at the political side of the whole debate of environmental conservation and protection at the international level, this era is a very dark era, in my opinion. To the Europe and to the States. So during 17th, 18th century, we see that the Industrial Revolution happened mainly in Europe and the States. So by this Industrial Revolution, what happened was, now lot of inventions, discoveries took place, and then we see much of the output of the Industrial Revolution was not a friendly thing happened to the environment. So environment did not welcome actually the Industrial Revolution, because one, there are two ways that the environment was invaded, I would say. One way was that they used the raw materials excessively. In an excessive manner, they used up the raw materials, the natural resources. Can be air, can be minerals, can be land, forest. So they used all of these raw materials and the natural resources excessively for their industrial process. Second way was, now once they put up the industrialism in the West, they dispose garbage and then they emit polluted air. So in that way also they polluted the environment as a result of the industrial process. So both these ways they used up much of the natural resources on the earth. And then this thing was going on like this for a while, and then in 1958 there was a news report in one of the papers in the US, and that news report was about deadly birds were found over a short period of time in one state of the USA. And then the scientific researchers were carried out, and one of the scientists was a female scientist, and also she was an environmentalist. Her name is Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson was a scientist who conducted into this scenario took place. Very unfortunate incident happened to these birds, and she was experimenting Can you hear me, Lahiruni? I think there was a drop in the network. Can you hear me?
Yes, madam, I can hear you now. Yeah.
So what I was telling was now in Silent Spring, this Rachel Carson published this alarming data and information about DDT, using use of DDT, which was a pesticide, caused the death of these birds. Now this finding opened the eyes of the global community to rethink their industrial process, and it was the first time that the Europe and also the States realized that there should be some other repercussion, not only the positive outcome of the industrial revolution. So we always talk about this, that in my classes, that the Silent Spring was a remarkable contribution for the development of environmental law, because now as a result of the finding of Rachel Carson in Silent Spring, the Europe took the first step in 1972 in Sweden, Stockholm. The United Nations Conference on Human Environment took place. So that was the first time the UN held a conference on environmental protection. Before that, environment was just something that you can you relate to poetry or scenic beauty or wildlife, so and hunting and environment conservation, not from the point of view environmental protection. So that was the first time that the global community led by the UN began to realize that, well, we have to revisit our future agendas in development. So following up in 1972, the first conference in Stockholm, United Nations Conference on Environment and Human Environment, and then in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, we had the second conference. So likewise, in 2002 Johannesburg conference, and then 2012 Rio Plus 20 conference. So likewise, we have so far 4 UN conferences on environmental protection. In addition to that, we had so many other environmental initiatives took place for the development of environmental law. So I think you all know that climate change, there are so many documents, mainly Paris agreement at the moment, and also ozone depletion. We have another protocol called Montreal Protocol, and also biodiversity
It actually looks like we are having a connection issue, so we'll wait till Dr. Kokila is able to regain her connection.
I'm sorry again, there's a network problem. Okay, so I was explaining that there are so many international documents. Hiruni, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you now. You can try switching off the video if the connection keeps on getting disrupted.
Can you? Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you now. Yes.
Can you hear me, Lairuni?
Yes, I can hear you now, ma'am.
There were some technical issues. Sorry about it. Okay. So what I was telling was that there are so many international documents today, and we have a lot of set of international laws on environmental protection. In addition to these documents, there are certain very significant landmark decisions by International Court of Justice which enrich environmental law. And also, I should mention here
It actually looks like we are having a connection issue, and we are extremely sorry for this inconvenience. We kindly request all of you to stay tuned with us till we fix the issue as fast as possible.
Okay, I think I'm back. Sorry about that. But what I was discussing was, I think you can hear me, right?
Yes, yes, ma'am. But in order to like save the data and for a better connection, it's actually okay to switch off the video.
Right. Okay.
If
So, well, what I was telling was that we have set of laws and internationally, and what I was telling was that if you look at few years ago, no, decades ago, environmental law was not a subject that was taught in the law schools, but now it has become hugely popular subject all over the world, and any university in the world offer environmental law. If I quickly come back to Sri Lanka at the national level, since 1980, we did not have a national level environmental act until 1980. Now we have a National Environment Act in Sri Lanka since 1980. And there are so many other environmental protection and conservation related acts and statutes in Sri Lanka. So even in the Faculty of Law in Colombo University, we did not have environmental law in the 1980s. It was in 1990s the subject was introduced, and now it is a co-compulsory subject, and it is contributing a lot for the development of environmental jurisdiction in Sri Lanka. And if I quickly go to the judicial contribution, that is also remarkable. Now we see more and more contribution by the judiciary for the development of environmental law in Sri Lanka. So that is how I will briefly overview and answer your question, how environmental law was introduced to the legal curriculum at the international level and in Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much for that detailed explanation, Dr. Konasinghe. I was also fascinated to hear about the whole historical and modernist approaches to it. It also reminded me of the speech by Seattle, like a long time back, where starting off from the earliest of civilizations, they were talking about the importance of protecting the environment. And now, in terms of considering the idea of green activism, like within the current social context, it indicates that there should be a lot of work at grassroots level in order to provide solutions for environmental issues. Now, when we consider the question of like where exactly the role of the law is in terms of addressing these issues, how would you give your opinion on the contribution of the law towards providing an effective solution for the pressing environmental issues at hand?
As a lawyer and a legal researcher, I would say law can do very, very, very limited thing in protecting environment. So that is my understanding. It's very limited. But attitudinal changes and awareness, and also we say activism can do much more than what law can do. In order to have new laws also, we have that set of pressure groups and forces. So I think starting from a positive point that law can actually set the guidelines and set the principles and inform about the punishments and maintain rule of law in environmental law. But I would say, Lahiruni, that there's still a larger space in environmental protection that should be filled by people like you, people like Earthmates organization, and people who participate in this discussion today, listening to me. And we are a forum that discussing about environmental conservation. I think we can do much more than what the law can do. That is my experience and that is my understanding through all my research. And now, what is this green activism or environmental activism? And how can it contribute for the development of environmental protection? It's an interesting thing to analyze. And I would say that when I look at the overall understanding of green activism, I see many developments particularly in India and also in many other parts of the world internationally. And now I see a slight green light in Sri Lankan jurisdiction as well. So I'm very happy to present on this activism part because first of all, I will divide the green activism into 3 categories. And the first category is judicial activism. Second, legal activism. Third, green activism. Let me first elaborate on the first point that I said, that is judicial activism. Now, judicial activism means that judges can make law. Can they? Who makes the law? The legislature. That is the popular understanding of lawmaking governance process. And if there are any political science students here, they would say that the legislature made the law. Who is the legislature? The parliament, members of the parliament. And they make the laws. So all the laws are made at the parliament because we are the country, Commonwealth country, who believe sovereignty of the parliament. And we give our power as people of this country to the members of the parliament to make laws on us behalf. And they make the laws. And now I just mentioned that judge can make law. Now, for the non-law students, I would say, yes, they can. If a 7-bench of the Supreme Court decide on a matter and give the judgment, then it becomes a legal precedent. That means the following up cases, similar matters can be decided upon that judgment. Okay, so that is why we green activists, we environmentalists are waiting for the appeal on Vilpattu judgment at the Supreme Court and waiting for the judgment to be delivered by a 7-bench judgment at the Supreme Court, because it will definitely become a legal precedent. So we call this a realistic approach of judges making law as a very progressive to pass a bill, argue, debate on a matter, and then come up with a decision that will be perhaps too late. So therefore, this whole idea of judge-making law has become very popular in environmental protection all over the world. Particularly, this is very popular in India. So the Indian Supreme Court deliver excellent judgments on environmental protection. And also at the ICJ, International Court of Justice, and recently in 2014 in New Zealand, and also 17 in New Zealand, and also there are so many other judges make laws all over the world on environmental matters. As I told you that we also have some interesting elements to contribute to the developments of judge-making laws by the cases, Epavala case, you all know Bulankulama case, famously known as Bulankulama case, Epavala case, and also Chunnakam power plant case, and also the recently decided Vilpattu judgment. So all three judgments, we can see that there are interesting legal developments. So we call this as a judicial activism. So we encourage the judges to step outside the law books and be empathetic towards environment and look at the environment from a coexisting point of view and to live in harmony with the nature. Judges should make law unless the statutory bodies take the necessary step. So in this analysis, I would say that judge-making law or judicial activism is a very interesting phenomenon within the green activism. And then the next one, that is legal activism. So if I am correct, I think there are many law students here. Now this is about your contribution. If you are a student today, you will become a lawyer in 2-3 years time. So this is your responsibility. Legal activism. What can attorneys at law do in terms of environmental protection? That is why I appreciate this effort. Many of the law students are here. So this is your responsibility. Judges can do wonders at the court. This was proved by, in India, MC Mehta, and there are many other lawyers who have contributed a lot for the development of Indian jurisdiction on environmental protection. And also in Sri Lanka, Dr. Jagat Gunawardena and Mr. Ravindranath Dabare, and there are many other lawyers who have contributed their intellectual capacity and also their effort towards environmental protection. And I always tell my students to be creative, to think out of the box. Why? Because law is there in the books, but you are the one who interprets that. You are the one who develop the arguments. So you have to be creative. You have to think like an activist, legal activist, not just merely don't interpret, go and interpret black and white law. That is no use of doing in terms of environmental protection. You need to interpret the law creatively. So that is legal activism, and lawyers have done wonders all over the world in terms of interpreting law for the development of the environmental jurisdiction. And the last one, that is the most interesting one, and that is what you are doing here. You have an organization called Earthmates, and everybody who is joined here spend their time, their data, their intellectual capacity towards a common goal, towards making everyone aware of environmental protection, a legal analysis. And this is very important task. And you can contribute in this way towards the environmental protection in Sri Lanka. And it will ultimately be benefited for the global perspective of environmental protection. So green activism, when you talk about green activism, actually the southern American countries like Bolivia and Chile and Mexico, there are so many environmental activists currently working towards environmental protection. So does in Africa. And also our neighboring country, India, has a very golden history of activism. In 1974, they have this Chipko movement, 73 in Chipko movement, what they did was they hugged the trees when there were movement to cut deforestation. So what they did was they hugged the trees and protected the trees. So they were called tree huggers. They prevented cutting trees. The similar kind of movement happened in 2014 in Sri Lanka by Center for Environmental Justice. What they did was in Nilgala Forest, there was a movement to deforestation in Nilgala Forest, and what they did was they ordinate the trees. So there was a big tree ordination ceremony, and if I just quickly show you a picture. I don't know whether it is clear.
It is clear. It is clear.
Yeah, it's a tree ordination ceremony, and that was a first of that kind in the world, actually, ordinate trees. So that is the kind of, you think creatively towards environmental protection. So likewise, we can remember that in early 2000 there was this movement called Narmada Bachao Andolan. And that was led by Arundhati Roy towards a building of a dam over a Indian river, and that was River Narmada, and that was a huge cry towards environmental protection, and many human rights issues were also there. And likewise, I can remember so many environmental movements, green movements happened in Sri Lanka, India, and all over the world. And if you can remember recently in New Zealand, Wanganui River case, where Maori indigenous people protested, and they won the case by the New Zealand Supreme Court, and ultimately the river Wanganui obtained the legal locus standi to go to court as a person, legal person. So that is the kind of approaches taken by the green movement and activists. So that is why with wholeheartedly I join with you, educating you and sharing my little knowledge and experience with you, because you are the future generation and you are the environmentalist in the future generation. And by 2030 we have to win sustainable development goals, and by 2030 you will be a middle layer career. So what are your plans in 2030 when the whole world is looking at sustainable development goals? What would be your role as a human being in this world, and as a lawyer or as a scientist or as a social scientist in this world? So that is the kind of approach you should talk about when you talk about green movement today. So there are so many environmental issues happening all around us in Sri Lanka and elsewhere. So there are so many spaces that you can step in. I'm not talking about changing systems. We can't change the system, but we can work within our own space to change the world for a better cause. So that is the aim should be of a green activism. So those are the three things: judicial activism, legal activism, and green activism, in addition to laws that I would emphasize that should be enlightened towards environmental protection.
I was actually fascinated to hear about the different paradigms that belong to the concept of green activism. And it was actually like motivating in the sense that it gives the idea that it's the collective responsibility of every citizen, whether they belong to the judiciary or whether they're attorneys at law or whether they're engaged in a different profession. It brings out the conclusion that it is the collective responsibility of everyone to take an active role in terms of addressing environmental issues. But like, since the topic at hand is about like the legal analysis, as Dr. Konasinghe reiterated, it also becomes evident that our legal system I mean, it's not a completely perfect system. As with any other system, it also consists of its loopholes. So would you have any recommendations or suggestions for the further improvement of the existing system?
Yes. One thing, it should be depoliticized. There's no argument about it. Environmental policies, education policies in a country should be depoliticized. Environmental policies and education policies, on top of the every other thing, should be national policies, like in India. So whatever the government, whatever the color of the government changes over the period of time of 4 years or 6 years, should not change the environmental policies or education policies in a country. It should be stable. So that is my first suggestion or first comment on that question, Lairuni. So leave out the environment and the education for politicizing policies. You can have on economic or whatever policies, foreign policies can be changed from government to government, but education, environment should be national policies, and it should be the Sri Lanka, not policies of this party government or that party government. And then the second reform will be the judges and the legal paternity of the country should be very well educated on environmental protection. And also the education system should have proper plans for the future, educating and making the students aware. Because according to Agenda 21, Section 3 has major groups that should be strengthening for the development of environmental protection. And one of these major groups is youth and children. So I am also particularly fascinated about educating youth and children, because I think only the hope is there. Once you become an adult and once you have your own priorities in life, it's very difficult to make them aware that the seriousness of environmental threat. But as a child who will become an adult in few years' time and who will be responsible for the future of this country or future of this world, I think education system should integrate more and more environmental education into the national education system. Above all, I think as human beings and as citizens of this country, under the Constitution, directive principles of state policies, Article 28F, we have, as human beings, as people who live in this country, we have a responsibility towards protecting and taking care of the environment. So we can point our fingers at the government, but we should realize that we also have a responsibility. So unless it is a collective partnership of government institutions and the people of the country, I don't think we can achieve environmental protection in this country. So it is not just merely posting environmental post in your Facebook or update your title with the caption of saving Vilpattu will do this. So you have to have an intellectual debate towards environmental protection, and also you should educate your younger generation. All the people I think are here joining here must be between 18 to 30 years. I think that is the age range who are joining here today. Perhaps here and there can be differences. I think in you parents soon. You will be parents in 10 years time, 5 years time, you will be parents. So it is your duty as an adult and as a human being to educate your younger generation towards environmental conservation. So those are my reforms actually. There are legal reforms that we can implement, but above all, I think we have sufficient laws to protect the environment of this country, as long as you interpret, you develop your arguments creatively based on the existing legal framework. I don't have any argument or any comment, a critical comment on the legal. We have sufficient laws, but it is a matter of interpreting them creatively and liberally, as well as creatively developing your arguments as a lawyer. Yes.
Yes, Dr. Konasiva, thank you so much for that explanation and for all your suggestions. Now, it actually brings up to the question that when it comes to environmental law, it's actually a very dynamic subject that is also interconnected with a number of other disciplines. So do you have any suggestions that will act as a guiding framework for anyone who is interested in pursuing career opportunities or who is like interested in engaging themselves in activism?
That is a question that I should be very carefully answer, mainly because of this reason. Environmental activism, nobody can force you or guide you. It should be a passionate coming from the heart. But there is a way that people can think of developing their knowledge on environmental law or environmental sciences. For that, I can advise. My advice will be that there are so many environmental courses offering by most of the universities. Colombo University has faculty of law, and we have courses like for lawyers, for law students, we have LLM. And I introduced a new curriculum to LLM course on environmental law and policy. So since 2016, we have master students who study environmental and policy for their LLM studies. And also the Department of Public and International Law offer two courses, one in Diploma in International Law, where environmental law is a component, and also we have certificate course on Public and International Law, where environmental law is a component. So we have those two courses. And in addition to that, science faculty has a zoology department, and I think they offer so many environmental science related courses. Also, faculty of graduate studies offer environmental management, and also there are some other courses related to environmental protection. And I personally know Sri Jayawardhanapura University has a Center for Environmental and Water Resources, as far as I can remember. And they also offer courses on environmental protection. Even Moratuwa University, the Department of Building Economics offer environmental governance course. And in addition to that, Peradeniya University and Open University also offer environmental related courses. So likewise, at the degree level and diploma level and certificate level, there are so many courses on environmental related subject disciplines. And in addition to that, I think you can consider that there are so many websites, blogs, and Facebook pages, very, very informative Facebook pages conducted by several environmentalists and organizations have so much very comprehensive information and very updated knowledge on those Facebook pages and social media pages, websites that you can follow. And also, finally, I should say that in the Faculty of Law, we have established Center for Environmental Law and Policy. And by this center, we conduct researchers. And currently, we are involving two SARC level researchers, one on disaster management and one on climate change. And we are now under work in progress on 2 SAARC level South Asian reports. And we are representing Sri Lanka for that by Center for Environment Law and Policy. We are going to produce a South Asian report on climate change and disaster management, 2 separate research projects. And also, you might have seen on the social media that the Center for Environmental Law and Policy published 2 books. One is Animal Welfare Provisions and Case Law. That is the first publication on animal welfare in Sri Lanka on provisions and case laws. And we collected all the provisions and case laws on animal welfare. That is available in all the bookshops, and it is given for a very considerable price, 300 rupees, and you can purchase it. And also, we at the end of this month, we are going to publish a very, very important book for any lawyer, any environmental scientist, that is on public nuisance. Provisions and case law. It's a compilation. So both are compilations of case law and provisions, and it will come out at the end of this month. So likewise, you can educate yourself, you can make aware of yourself on so many legal courses. And I would encourage, if anyone would like to go outside of the country and conduct your research and postgraduate studies outside of the country, that is also most welcome. And let me know if I can be any help in that regard. To find a research proposal or anything like that, I'm more than happy to guide you, and support is always available. And also, if anyone is interested to join Center for Environmental Law and Policy and work, you can, likewise, you can get yourself engaged in environmental protection and educate yourself. So those are the things that come to my mind at once, Lahiruni. There can be many other things, but those are the things come to my mind.
Yeah, and with that, we'll be opening the session for the Q&A session. And for that, once again, I would like to remind all of you that you are welcome to ask any questions related to environmental law. And you can use that, you can do that by using the microphone, or you can like type them in the chat box. So
any suggestions and any comments for Earthmates or myself are also welcome, because we are always open for suggestions and comments. And also one other thing, Lahiruni, if you let me share some information with upcoming workshops and webinar.
yeah.
I would invite all of the people who are joining today to a webinar on sustainable development. Please share this message with whoever is interested. The law faculty final year students are organizing a webinar on sustainable development, and there will be 3 expert speakers. I beg your pardon. 3 expert speakers from the United Nations OHCHR, Office of Human Rights, Commissioner for Office of Human Rights. Sorry. And there will be so many interesting and updating knowledge on that sustainable development goals. So I would invite all of you to join us. Let me just mention the speakers who will be joining on that webinar. We will have Professor Erandati Lokupitia from Zoology Department. She is the director of the Center for Environmental Initiatives in the university, Colombo University. And also we have guest speakers, Dr. Shami Puvimana Singh. She is from Geneva, Human Rights Officer, Right to Development Section. OHCHR, and also we have Mr. Benjamin Sasha. He's also a Human Rights Officer, OHCHR, and also we have a Human Rights Officer on Sustainable Development Section in USA, OHCHR, Gaynal Khari. So those three will be presenting from the international perspective. And also we have Professor Randati Lokupik here, and I think that from youth perspective, Earthmates also joining us. So I invite all of you. We will share the Google form soon, and Earthmates will get back to you with the Google form. So please register and join us. You will definitely get a comprehensive knowledge, and in addition to that, we have small presentation by the final year law students on 17 sustainable development goals. So you will have, if you join us for 2 hours, and this is happening on next Wednesday, no, not next Wednesday, the following Wednesday on 20th of January. Please mark it on your diaries, 20th of January from 2 to 4. 20th of January from 2 to 4, and it will be a webinar series, and we will let you know the link and all the details, all the logistics through Earthmates. And I cordially invite all of you to join and educate yourself. That is something that I'm very happily inviting you, because I'm sure that it will be a very productive session, and we will get a lot of updated information by the OHCHR, the UN officers. Yes. Lahiruni?
Yes, it's actually amazing to hear about all these ventures taking place in spite of the fact that we are going through a pandemic situation. So I encourage all of us out there to actually, take part in these discussions and to contribute towards, creating awareness and engaging themselves in green activism. And once again, I would like to remind everyone that if there are any questions, please feel free to contact us directly by using the microphone, or please feel free to type your questions in the chat box.
And also, I think this it's a blessing that we have Corona in if you look at like that, because for researchers and educators and academia and students, I think we do the least environmental pollution but get the best knowledge over this using these online platforms. I quite enjoy that. Many people complain that this form of education, but I don't know, I see many positive sides of it. And talking about the webinar coming on 20th, I can't imagine that we invite those 3 experts from UN down to Colombo and have the conference for free of charge. I mean, that is amazing, the use of technology for environmental protection and environmental awareness. So please join us and make use of it. I'm sure that you won't be disappointed by registering and joining our session on 20th of January. Okay. Is there a question on the chat box? I think just a comment. Yes, I'm very happy that I'm going to Peradeniya University. There is a civil engineer sending a message on the chat box. I'm going to not going to, like, I'm going to conduct session at Peradeniya University this month, but on a different whole different aspect, that is right to education. But I will definitely deal with some environmental education perspectives. Thank you for sending your comment. Anything else that I can contribute, or
It actually looks like
Excuse me, can
okay,
I
we have a
ask a
question.
question?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for giving the opportunity. I'm actually interested in presentation, and I get many knowledge from this webinar, madam. Actually, thank you very much for that one. And I have a small question, madam. I'm actually not from the law side, I'm from the health side. I'm an undergraduate of the health promotion. Then my question is for the successful of the work, we can take the multidisciplinary approach. That means from the law contributions, from the health side, from the science, from the school children, like that. We all know that the COVID-19 will go in wronger and wronger. Then, madam, can you give some suggestions that we can maintain our attention toward the green activities on these time period, especially for the target in school children and the undergraduate who are passionate about these kind of themes? Can you give some suggestion, madam?
excellent input. May I know your name, please, if you don't mind?
I'm Vimukti Dhananjay, madam.
Thank you so much, Niluk. I think this is where we should step in. I always encourage my postgraduate students always to use this multidisciplinary approach. I think environmental law is the perfect example to show where you can step with multidisciplinary approaches. And also, it is the perfect example where you show the failure when you, unless you go through the multidisciplinary approaches, because the decision makers, administrators at the top level take decisions purely looking at one dimension of environmental protection, ultimately fail. That is a known and proven fact. So I think I would really encourage everyone to take multidisciplinary approach. And in order to solve environmental problems, as you very well correctly mentioned, that we should educate the school children, and educating the school children also should be from multidisciplinary approach. So it should be from the science curriculum, it should be from the health science, and it should be from any other multidisciplinary approach. Let's say now management of resources. And if one person does not know his management of resources, how can he contribute for the environmental protection by using limited resources of the earth? And also economics point of view, and legal point of view, science point of view, whatever that you say, political science perspective, international relations perspective. Like now, if you go for international negotiations, you will see how much that the voice of the developing countries is lack at the international forums and tables, because of many areas that we are lacking in scientific data and knowledge, and also economic awareness and economic predictions. So we are very much lacking those areas, because environmental protection is a multidisciplinary subject. Unless you have trained yourself to look at this problem from a multidisciplinary approach, it's a totally failure. That is very, very true. And I would support any effort that anyone would take to educate children and youth. as I said that I don't think twice when I take up sessions for school children and the university students. So that is something that that is very true that you mentioned. Thank you so much for that comment.
Thank you very much, madam.
Please feel free to ask if you have any more questions. And since we are running out of time, I would be grateful if if you can come up with 1 or 2 questions so that we can quickly talk about it and give our suggestions.
Please visit our Facebook page. We have Logo Screen Facebook page. So if you need to connect with us, I think that's a good platform that we can work together and organize things because most of the Earthmates members also are members of the Facebook page, Logos Green. And I have posted this about these publications as well, the 2 publications by the self. So please keep connected with us through this Facebook page. And I know that there are so many students from other universities, like I think Rajarata University and Ruhuna University. So I think we can work inter-university level. We can initiate certain efforts to protect environment and also now this is where I see the contribution by the universities are not very much visible. And also this is somewhere that you can, like most of you are products of free education, including myself. So every moment when we are graduated and when we are working in our own professions, whatever the profession you do, you should always think that we have to pay back to this country. The money coming from very poor people, taxpayers' money. So we have to pay back. So these kind of initiatives by this Earthmate and any other university level effort that you would like to make, please let me also know. I am very happy to contribute because we all got the benefit out of the free education in Sri Lanka. And comparing to any other part of the world, I think we have one of the best education systems. I always respect Sri Lankan education system, especially I feel that when I compare with some other developed countries and also some other part of the South Asian countries, we have one of the best education systems. So it is up to us to give back to the country. So remember that as university students, you must organize these kind of awareness programs and do in a little way, not changing the system. That is not what I'm talking about. In your own way, in your own space, you can make changes. So that is more than welcome to contribute myself as well.
Hi, everyone. If you don't mind, I have a question. I'm Malisha, and thank you, Dr. Konasinghe, for a very inspiring session. And thanks, Earthmates, for organizing this. I'm glad I came across this on social media. I wanted to ask you, how can we not only educate our children, but also get them involved in the action itself, in the activism and in the advocacy level? Because we see child activists all over the world like Greta, but in Sri Lanka, we don't really recognize children as agents of change. We see the youth doing a lot of work, but I wanted to know how can we sort of get them also engaged at a macro level and also change the mindset at a micro level where parents sort of keep them in this loop of, exams and schoolwork only. Thank you.
Yes, I'm a parent of two, so I know how it is. And but whatever the little space you can have, you can develop the passion for environment. Like very simple things that I would say, like if you look through the window and then you see the sky, the movement of the cloud, the movement of the birds. So let them experience this. Take them out in the night and let them experience the cool air and also the moon and the moonlight. So unless you feel those basic passionate things about the nature, little ones never understand about the climate change regulations or deforestation. This comes from very simple things. Now, if you go out in the night, you will see these fireflies and the stars in the sky. So you do a kind of observation in these things, and then you listen to the cricketers in the night, and in the daytime you see the changing of the. That is my kind of way to educate my children. And this just very simple things, like even in the university I tell this to my students, because whenever they sit on a bench in the university, what they do is they take their phone and then they look at the phone screen without looking anywhere else. So for hours and hours they spend on benches but not looking at the environment, not feeling the environment, and not observing, just looking at one very limited screen. Um, True that you have to use this social media, true that you have to go on your Facebook and Instagram, no problem with that. But to make a balance in your life, you have to feel the nature. There's no other way that human survival will be decided in the future. So, as you correctly pointed out, Manisha, that at individual level, we can do so many things. I live in Colombo, so there's no argument or excuse that you can give that we don't have uh, rivers and mountains. No, you don't need paddy fields in the backyard to enjoy environment. Even a very small pot of plant will tell you. And if you look at the sky, how many enjoyment and pleasure you can get observing the sky. That is one of my most favorite habits. I always see the changing pattern of the sky. So simple things like that can take you a long way in environmental conservation. So my point is that, and also I think I would encourage all of these students or the participants to read poetry on nature. Most of the poetry, I think my most favorite poets are Mahagama Sekara and Ratnashri Vijayasinghe. Both of them have written ample of poems related to nature. So you, without, I mean, unintentionally, you fall in love with nature. So those are the things that you can inculcate in the children's mind. And in macro level and micro level, I would say there are certain initiatives in the current education system, because we have this I don't know the word, how do they call, Parisara Niyamu program conducted by Central Environmental Authority, and we have this environmental pilot. So I don't know what word they use in schools. So I think that is successfully conducting at the moment before Corona, and I also joined few activities with them, and in that way I think. But I mean, there are certain complaints as well, like you can see that a lot of competition is there for the badges and all. But despite of that, I think that is a national level project that is collaborated with Central Environmental Authority and Ministry of Environment, this Parisara Niyamu project. So likewise, we have tree planting campaigns, and also in school curriculum, there is environmental studies from grade 1. Environmental studies syllabus is there, and I personally follow this syllabus in the primary grade, and it is really good. But I'm not sure whether the teaching and really educating the children of those syllabus is happening at the expected level to meet the expected outcome. That is, I'm not sure. I can't guarantee. But the syllabus is education curriculum is very well structured towards making children environmental friendly. But there are certain limitations, I understand, because you can't actually practice with the students unless you practice environmental activities. Just knowing or reading books won't give you the real passion to environmental protection. I think that is why we started Logos Green project in 2015 in the university with the final year. And I see a lot of development and a lot of passion for environment, and many students end up in environmental related career. So that is the way that you can develop the passion for environment. But in your own space, I think, just take the kids out to the garden, out to small places that you can visit close by, and then just let them observe the nature and let them play with the nature. Now, our present day parents, they are actually very busy. They can't commit themselves to take out kids to these places and get them real environmental education. But I know now in Diatoyana and also this Apegama, and also we have this wetland park in Battaramulla. It's a very good place. So close by we have so many places that we can visit with kids and make themselves educated. But that's a good point, Manisha. I understand that concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. That was very insightful, and I really admire the work that you're doing as well.
Thank you.
We also have Akishla Batuantudava asking about the adequacy of the existing environmental laws on the path to sustainable development, and if they are not adequate, through which sectors they should be activated.
We have a Sustainable Development Act, but that is sort of limited approach to sustainable development, I would say. The Sustainable Development Act has established a unit to work on sustainable development, but I think we have the sustainable development. If you look at the global perspective, it has gone a long way since the establishment, since the introduction of a sustainable development concept in 1992 by Agenda 21. They have gone a long way. Now, right to development and so many other aspects of climate change and means of implementation. So a lot of things are happening at the global level. So please, Akila, right? Akshila, the person who posted Akshila, yes. So please join us on 20th. You will have a lot of information on sustainable development. If you are conducting research on sustainable development, I think that is really, really helpful, the 20th webinar. And I would say that we have actually adequate laws to implement sustainable development, provided we utilize them in the proper manner. Sustainable development is not only about environmental law, it is about balancing economic goals and environmental protection. And also, you have to take in consideration the social issues involved in a particular development project when you look at sustainable development. Akshina, now answering your questions, there are two legal tools that would cater sustainable development goals and sustainable development laws. First one is environmental impact assessment, introduced by 1988 amendment to the National Environment Act. And this amendment changed Article 23 of the Act, and they introduced environmental impact assessment, EIA. So now any major development project, in order to carry on a development project, they have to undergo a process called environmental impact assessment. And environmental impact assessment is a sustainable development tool, because in that they consider all the aspects of the development project and the future predictions of the worst case analysis. So whatever the environmental impact that could cause as a result of implementation of a particular project, they identify, recognize those problems beforehand, prior to the implementation of the project. That is what you call EIA. And in this report, they should include alternatives. So if the project proposal has a certain way of doing the project, if that causes major environmental impacts, then you have to produce alternatives, and you have to choose those alternatives, right? So that is a very good initiative, I would say, to go towards a sustainable development, environmental impact assessment. The other one is environmental protection license mechanism. Again, in 1988, National Environment Act introduced this law. That is that for industrialist, if he or she is going to implement a factory or manufacturing process or anything that could cause pollution, then that person has to apply for environmental protection license. This is coordinated by the Central Environmental Authority, and this environmental protection license mechanism ensure that this whole environmental pollution that could caused by that manufacturing process to the minimum level. So there are certain conditions that the industrialists have to adhere to, and that will make sure that this manufacturing process will not commit any environmental pollution or commit minimum environmental pollution. As I said, that sustainable development is not only about environmental protection, but also there are certain environmental commitments we have to make towards a development process. So EPL, Environmental Protection License mechanisms, ensure that the industrialist will maintain his industrial process to the minimum level of environmental harm. So those two, environmental protection license mechanism and environmental impact assessment process, are actually adequate on the part of the sustainable development goals.
Thank you very much, Dr. Konasinghe, for that explanation. And it actually looks like we do not have any more questions for the day. So we will be wrapping up the session for today. And I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Kokila Konasinghe for the extremely enlightening discussion on legal activism for environmental conservation. I was actually, lucky enough to be one of her students when she was organizing the campaign for Law Goes Green at the Faculty of Law, University of Colombo in the year 2018. And I remember how she was always compelling us to think out of the box and be passionate when it comes to like environmental issues. And I believe that she's a true inspiration for all of us out there who are looking for opportunities and who are truly passionate about creating a difference in the society we live in. So thank you very much, Dr. Konasinghe, for your extremely valuable feedback and for your activism.
Thank you so much, and I go on, everyone. And I would say that I am overwhelmed by being presented here. And I have presented another keynote speech yesterday at a private university. And the pleasure and the satisfaction I get by involving in this kind of initiative organized by university students is priceless. And I think that's the way we should pay back to the country. and whatever the initiative, whatever the contribution that you would expect from me on environmental protection and legal contribution, I'm more than happy to join you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And again, I would give you my heartiest blessings for the future successful events in the future. Thank you so much, and I go on.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, thank you for the organizing committee of Earthmates and Voice for the Unborns for this amazing opportunity, and for all the participants for gracing the occasion today. And we also hope to come up with similar webinars in the future. So we hope that all of you stay tuned with Earthmates Foundation. Thank you.